and I think we will begin the meeting quietly to let additional participants arrive if some people are still joining. So this is a meeting organized by the Evaluation of Research Interest Group. My name is François Genova. I am one of the co-chairs of the group, and I am currently in Strasbourg in France. Maybe you can put where you are in the chat. So I think there are many places in many time zones around the screen, so we will have a look. Everybody will see that. Devika, Carmel?
Hello, everybody.
Yeah. Yes, go on, Devika.
Yeah,
I
am Devika Madalli, one of the co-chairs. I am located at present at Bangalore in India. Welcome, everybody.
Hello, I'm Carmel. I'm a technical writer at the ARDC from Melbourne, Australia. Hi.
So today I think I will begin to share the slides. So link to the slides in the note-taking document, and I have to find present here. So I think that many of you are old-timers in the RDA, but it's always good to go back to the guiding principles. So here they are: openness, community-driven, building, consensus building, non-profit and technology neutral, harmonization and inclusivity. And welcome to everybody in this meeting. So just a few words to remind about what the group is about. Maybe if it's the first time attending a meeting of this group, maybe you can also write it in the chat so that we have an idea of the newcomers. So the group is here, as it's explained in its title, to discuss evaluation of research and its evolution. So the main aim is to advocate for fair data and software as research outputs to be fully recognized within research evaluation frameworks, because we are in RDA, and of course data and software are at the core of the activities of RDA community, and the idea is to support the RDA community because we all need the evaluation of research frameworks to evolve so that our activities are fully recognized. One of the key objectives we have is to liaise with relevant RDA groups, and we will have an example today with the colleagues who are dealing with non-traditional research outputs and processes in the RDA, who have been kind enough to join us in this meeting. And we also liaise with external initiatives. We are also ready to contribute expertise from the RDA community to the many stakeholders of the evaluation of research. So current activities, we have liaison with initiatives, RDA groups, I will say, we will see that during the meeting, and external initiatives. We will also have one example during the meeting. What is starting is that we have begun a subgroup to assess the possible RDA role on disciplinary perspectives in the evaluation of research. And there is at least one member of this group. Carmel and I are working with a group, and Chris, who will speak later during the meeting, is one of the members of this group. We are still working on updating the initial output of a group, which is a document which is called RDA Value for Evaluation of Research, and we will discuss this also during the meeting. And the registry of relevant initiatives, there has been not much evolution on that for a while. But it's still available for people who want to collaborate, to contribute. So just the liaison, we organize meetings, specific meetings with groups to discuss and establish liaison. So we had a meeting some time ago with the colleagues from the Shark group, and Chris is one of the co-chairs of Shark now. We also, at the same meeting, had a presentation of artificial intelligence and data visitation working group. We have a good liaison with the uptake of digital infrastructure interest group also. And we are building the liaison with Alpha for anti-arrows colleagues, and we will discuss this further during the meeting. If we go towards international initiatives, we have had several meetings in liaison with COARA, including an Asia Pacific workshop before the last plenary. And we also have discussed with Make Data Count. And recently, we organized with colleagues from Uptake of Digital Infrastructure Interest Group a meeting to listen to the outcomes of a Force 11 working group, which is working on data usage typologies. And we will say a word about that during the meeting also. So the agenda, this was the welcome, then discussion of the activities since the last plenary and what we plan to do until the next plenary, and then a few words about next step. Do you have any comments or questions? I don't see, please put your questions in the chat. I don't see any. So I understand I can go on with the talk, and I will. So here it is. And I guess you are supposed to see it. So the first topic is the liaison with Force 11 working group, which is tackling data usage typologies. So Force 11 set up a group to develop a typology of data usage, which can be used by all the stakeholders who are willing to discuss data usage. So the people, of course, of the repositories who are themselves producing and sharing data, not producing, but managing and sharing data, and who want to know how people use it. For instance, institutions who have data holdings from their staff and who want to know who is using them, if they apply open science and share the data holdings, and so on and so forth. So the working group was set up in January last year, and it will be running until June this year. The two co-chairs, Evgeny Bobrov and Irache Puebla, were kind enough to participate in an event we organized on the 24th of February with the colleagues from the Uptake of Digital Infrastructure Interest Group to explain us where the working group is and to show us a preliminary description of the outcomes of the first outcome of the group. The first outcome is a report which is describing the typology. It's, of course, a topic of high interest for many RDA activities, and this is why we organized the presentation by the working group co-chairs as an RDA event and not as a meeting solely aimed at the interest groups members. So one result of the, so I think I put, yes, you have a link to the slides which were presented in the slide here. And there is a link to the slides in the note-taking document. If you want to take them and try the links, please do. So one result of the presentation is that the interest group on uptake of digital research infrastructure has decided to examine the typology with their own use case in mind, and to provide feedback if any. I was not able to attend their meeting, but it was discussed at the last interest group meeting before the plenary, and I think it's one of the things they will do in the next months, I would say. We are interested in that, of course, because as with evaluation of research hat, because it's aligned fully with the need to take into account the diversity of research activities and products in research evaluation. And as I said, we want data to be one of the outcomes of research which is fully taken into account. So in the report, there will be use cases by diverse stakeholders, researchers, evaluators, and many kinds of evaluators, infrastructure providers, repository providers. The information, we have a meeting of a Force 11 working group later this afternoon, and the plans are to disseminate the report in public very soon with a request for comment. So stay tuned. We will disseminate information when the report is ready and public, and you are very welcome to comment it. The next step for that group is defining metadata linked to the typology, and it is only beginning now. So, any questions? I see that there are things in the chat, but it's only the note-taking document. So, any question or comment? I think it's really something which is interesting for many of the RDA groups, this endeavor. And so I guess WDS Meredith, maybe you will be interested to have a look at that with the repositories in mind, I suppose. Yes, sorry, I talk to you because I see you on this. I see your name on the screen. So. And there are probably other people here who will also be interested in using the typology. The advantage of this kind of typology is that it provides a vocabulary which can be used by people. And Chris is another faithful member of the group, of the Force 11 working group. So he knows all that very well. So maybe if there are no comments, we can go to the next part of the presentation. And the next part of the presentation is the liaison with the colleagues who just began an interest group about infrastructures for non-traditional research outputs and processes. This is really at the core of the commitments to evolve the assessment of research and the recognition of diverse contributions. And there are many very diverse contributions to research. And the colleagues from infrastructures for non-traditional research outputs and processes are really willing to tackle the issue in the RDA. So we organized a meeting together in January, the two groups, so that we can discuss about what we are doing in the groups and explore possible synergies. And the idea at this stage was that our colleagues from the interest group tell us about what they are doing, and then we will discuss what we can do together and the complementarity between the activities. So Andrew is here.
Jenny's also here.
I'm here.
Yes, so
Andrew picked things up first, I think, and then I can
So
chip in.
Jenny, Andrew, please go on. Thank you for being with us.
Yeah. Hi, Francoise. Hi, everybody. Thanks for the invitation to come chat a little bit about what we're up to and to continue the conversation about synergies between our two interest groups. Maybe first we can introduce ourselves. And since I'm talking, I'll go first. I'm Andrew Huffman. I work in research data management at Leiden University in the Netherlands. I am located within the Faculty of Social and Behavioral Sciences, and within that, I split my time between two different institutes. One is the Cultural Anthropology and Development Sociology Institute. The other is the Center for Science and Technology Studies, also known as CWTS. Jenny, why don't you introduce yourself first and then I'll.
Sounds good. Thank you, Andrew. So, hi, everyone. I'm Jenny Evans. I'm based at the University of Westminster in London, in the UK. My interest in this space and how this all relates to what I do is my day job is research environment and scholarly communications lead at the University of Westminster. So I'm responsible for research data management, repository, open access, University of Westminster Press Services in the university. And I am also PI on a Arts and Humanities Research Council funded project in the UK to set up a national data service and repository for practice research outputs, creative outputs. So the researchers I primarily work with are in these kind of creative disciplines who create these so-called non-traditional research outputs. And Andrew and I actually connected via RDA, I think. So we're definitely a success story of how RDA enables like-minded people to find each other. So I think that's probably it from me. Back to you, Andrew.
Yeah, and in terms of my sort of daily work, I'm effectively a data steward in those two departments that I mentioned, and it's sort of an interesting mix because on the anthropology side, there's actually a lot of multimodal anthropological ethnographic research that happens. So one of my entry points into the interest group that I'm now co-chairing, but also the overlaps here is about yeah, the sort of visibility of this type of work within academia, within infrastructures, and also in sort of consulting and supporting researchers working with these types of approaches, which could be ethnographic film, sound studies, physical outputs from research, hacked together devices, or what have you. Very early on in my time in this position, I immediately began to realize that the infrastructure that's out there is not very well suited for a lot of these kinds of things, including our own sort of scholarly repository at Leiden University. On the other side of the street where I work at the Center for Science Technology Studies, which some of you may know, they do a lot of large-scale scientometrics research, studying the scientific system. There's also a lot of interest there in new modes of scholarly communication, and again, sort of rethinking the infrastructure that we're using in those settings as well. So yeah, I think my role in this group nicely ties together what I'm doing sort of on the ground in these two institutes where I work. And as Jenny said, thanks to the RDA, we found each other. We jointly hosted. Did we jointly host a BOF? Or was that?
We jointly hosted a few BOFs, I think.
Well, I sort of I was a bit of a latecomer, but
that's true. I think maybe two or three BOFs. Yeah.
But then our interest group was ratified just before the last plenary meeting. And so, yeah, that was kind of the kickoff. And since then, we have been meeting regularly, some may say too regularly, between October and now, to yeah, try and sort of find a course for what we can do with the energy and the time that folks interested in this space bring to the RDA. Um, Maybe just a quick word about the scope. So we have a kind of working definition of NTROs as those things which do not take the form of published books, chapters, journal articles, or conference publications, which can of course include things like I already mentioned, film, photography, sound recordings, performances, gallery exhibitions, and other composite multimedia outputs. We have struggled with using the term non-traditional because actually in both Jenny and my experience, a lot of what is discussed as non-traditional in the sense of how we've just sort of framed it, um, it's actually quite traditional, right? These are the main things that researchers working in these kinds of fields actually trade in. So yeah, naming the group was a bit of a struggle, but in the end we went for the name that kind of has some familiarity at this point, but it's always used with a bit of an asterisk. What more can I tell you? Jenny, do you want to jump in or sorry to put you on the spot?
That's all right, no worries. So I think, yeah, so I guess it's interesting. We come from different but aligned perspectives, and I think it's what's been very interesting is the global interest we've had and where this kind of space sits in various parts of the world. In some places in the UK, there is recognition by research evaluation systems in our research excellence framework. However, there are pros and cons to that, because it kind of depends on who's deciding what is valued. And I think this gets back to, I know what Francoise and her colleagues are really interested in is that discipline kind of place to sort of agree about what matters to them. And I think the other thing I'd say is that the danger of starting with the format is that you immediately assume that, and that's the challenge, as Andrew said about the NTRO's kind of like framing, is that you immediately assume that actually this stuff is other, which to be honest, the systems, the scholarly systems and structures do assume it's other at the moment, and that's certainly fundamentally where I'm coming from is how we change that and get recognition. I think we've got a lot of interest from lots of different types of post holders, people very new to this research data space, which is interesting as well. People like me have been working on it for a long time, and Andrew too. And we're really trying to get our head around how we progress the work of the group. And I think this alignment and that collaboration between these two groups has been really helpful because it's helped us learn about how the research evaluation interest group works and how we can take those learnings, but also we can work with our community to kind of bring their perspectives. I know that the slides were quite helpful, Francois. So I don't know if we've gone off piste a bit there, or if there's anything we've not mentioned that you'd like us to. So I'm happy to pick up anything that we've missed. But does that? Oh, you're on mute, Francois.
What we discussed is that we think, as you say, that we have complementary activities, and I think that we can learn a lot. The Infra for NTROs group is organizing presentations of use cases. So there is potentially a wide variety of use cases, and I am a faithful member of the group, at least I try to be, and I am really interested to listen to the presentations and the following discussion, because it shows the fact that it's complicated to to understand all these things properly and to take them into account properly. So do you have to participants? Do you have questions to Andrew and Jenny?
Maybe just a quick word further to the point about use case presentation. So there's always a risk in RDA groups that the chairs kind of steer the direction of the group in terms of their immediate interests, and so to avoid that, we we started sort of putting out calls for people to bring their use cases or case studies to our group to discuss what they're doing, what the challenges are. So we've had a handful of presentations over the past few calls so far. And I think one of the things that maybe resonated most in terms of a place to concentrate and evolve the work that has a lot of overlap with what's going on here was a discussion about, do we need some list or vocabulary or ontology of kind of non-traditional output types? That was, I think, a really interesting and useful conversation that was brought to the floor by our colleague Fotis, who works over at the Opera's infrastructure. I know, Francoise, you were sort of interested in continuing that discussion, and I know that others were as well. It also actually came up at the call we had most recently. So in terms of a short-term place to direct our attention and efforts, I think that could be something that we can work on in the context of the infrastructure for non-traditional research outputs and processes working group, but also together with you folks to see how to do that in a way that would also be useful for some of the thinking about evaluation.
Yes, I took the liberty to show the next slide because it's about that topic. And I just took the names of non-traditional research outputs from the two of the presentations which were done recently in the Infra for Anti-ROs group. And there was one which was quite general about disciplines, and the other one also. And you see that there are many names of different outputs. And then you have this, the second list I took from a slide presented during the talk. And it's, when I see that with my, well, I have been involved in discussing vocabularies and taxonomies for a long time. And when I see that, I am tempted to think that it would be nice to organize this kind of list into something to help people reuse it. So if you think it's a useful work on your side, I think we can only fully agree with that and see what we can do to help, I would say. At least personally, I will be happy to participate. And so if there are people around the screen who are willing to know more about these activities and this kind of work, I put a link to the group page, so you can join it if you want to know what happens. There are meetings every 2 weeks, and so you have a good chance to be able to follow some of them, I would say. And
we have been meeting every 2 weeks, and maybe I'll clarify our rationale there. One is that, you know, maybe our initial work plan was a bit overly ambitious, knowing how busy Jenny and my schedules are, and we're currently working at sort of half capacity. Our initial group of co-chairs was 4, and functionally we're now down to 2. The other reason why we're doing this every other week is to test out sort of who shows up to these calls, considering that there are significant geographical and time zone differences that we're contending with, including with one of our co-chairs. So we've kind of been alternating every 2 weeks between a time that is more or less convenient for sort of Australia and Asian time zones, and another that's more or less convenient for at least East Coast US time zones. I think that following this meeting, and that's also on our agenda for our own interest group session tomorrow, is some discussion of what folks what folks think we should be doing going forward, but I think we'll probably scale back to once a month rather than once every 2 weeks following this plenary. So we don't want to overwhelm you.
Once a month is already a good occasion to meet you and to listen. Chris?
Yeah, I just wanted to say also, Jenny and Andrew, that in the Shark group, like we're sort of looking at the next steps for Shark, and we're looking at sort of additional sort of outputs that are not recognized, because it comes up in the Shark reports that we have, the recommendations and the surveys that that we've done, and so I think we might end up calling you at some point too to join us on one session. Not that you want to join yet another session, but yeah, like it would be great to have you join us at some point too.
Yes, and if you want to join the Shark Interest Group meeting, it's tonight for the Europeans and this evening for you, Chris, I guess. So,
Well, yeah, I think we expect only some diehards to go to that session.
I will be there.
Okay, right.
I
That's
can't
our
guarantee that I will, because I've been up at 4:30 a.m. for the past 2 days. But I think we've also been inspired by how Francoise and the rest of the co-chairs are approaching this interest group in terms of also focusing on interesting points of overlap and ways of liaising with the other groups. So yeah, we've stolen maybe a little bit out of your playbook and are thinking more concertedly about doing exactly this kind of thing. So if not tonight, then definitely not too long after the plenary, we can get in touch and find out a way to link up.
Yes, and I think that's good. It's exactly the aim of this group, to help people build liaisons. So I am happy. And I see in the chat, Bernhard showed up an anthology. Do you want to say a word about the anthology, Bernhard? So, I think Bernhard will come back. Okay, if you are on a train, it's too difficult. We may ask you about this ontology at another time. And so there is also Jenny, which has a schema and more to come. So you will post us when you will have more, I guess, Jenny.
Yes, we have. I'm just trying to get our project website live, and then I'll be able to point people to that, and you'll be able to monitor a bit more closely. But we will be implementing this in our repository build. So so I think it'll be a useful practical example, and import comments on that gratefully received.
Yes, one of the things we discussed between the two groups was about a project which is called Morphos, materializing open research practices in the humanities and social sciences. And it was pointed to us also by a member of the evaluation of research interest group, a subgroup dealing with disciplinary aspects. So we thought they just delivered documents which can be of real interest when thinking about what non-traditional research outputs can be and the variety of things they can be. And so I guess, yes, you have a link to their report in the slides, and they are examining outputs linked to and activities linked to open research practices. So they have a very long list of practices, and they also have a website, which is a catalog of open research practices in the arts, humanities, and social sciences, which is supposed to be evolving while they find more. So the plan we have with the colleagues from the non-traditional research output group is to organize a meeting with the Morphus project. Jenny, you are in touch with them, or your group is in touch with them. So
Yes.
we would like to organize a meeting with them to discuss this, their findings. And this will be done before the northern summer break, I would say.
Yes, agreed. Yeah.
Yes, it's important in RDA always to say whether summer is in the north or in the south. Otherwise,
yeah. As an Aussie living in London, I'm okay with you there.
So this will be advertised soon. And again, from the subgroup of evaluation of research on disciplinary activities, we also have the topic of tension between quantitative and qualitative research regarding open science practices in sociology, social sciences, I would say. So the idea would be to discuss also this topic when we meet the colleagues from Morphus. If you think it's appropriate, Jenny, to bring that topic to the discussion with them.
Yes, I think the team are more than happy to talk about the work that they've done. And there's a launch of the project of the catalogue event, I think tomorrow afternoon. I can try and dig out a link and share that with people. It's there's a few related projects taking place in the UK, and this is one of them. So I think they've really very well articulated some of the challenges and problems in how an open science framework that's grounded in scientific disciplines, how there are nuances needed and differences in the arts, humanities, and social sciences.
And
I guess we can. Yes, Andrew, go on.
I'm also sort of in touch with Nikki Lisa Cole, who's the lead author on the paper that we're looking at right now. I don't know if it's an idea to reach out to her and whether that would be a separate call to discuss that paper. But if we want to sort of engage the folks behind this other paper as well, I'm happy to reach out.
Thank you. I think it would be good, and there is no obligation to put everything in the same basket in the same meeting. But I think the two topics are very interesting to discuss. And if we can discuss with the authors, it's absolutely wonderful. So I think we will go back to you and see how we organize these things together. And if we can have an aim to do it before June or in June at the latest, I think it would be nice. So we stay in touch about that. I don't see questions. I don't see questions in the chat. So I think we have begun here to discuss about disciplinary aspects. Andrew, Jenny, do you have things you want to add about your group? Seems to be okay. So
I think we've sufficiently covered it. We're meeting tomorrow at the same later at 4. What's our
at the same time.
Three,
You are
yeah.
in the last breakout. You're in the last breakout.
Yeah.
Tomorrow.
Yes, exactly. So same time tomorrow, wherever you are, we'll be meeting. Please do join us if you would like. We'd love to see you. Thank you for giving us a little bit of time today.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your thoughts about all that. I think we will continue to work together and it will be good. So the next topic, if I can reach, it's about disciplinary aspects of research evaluation, we had a meeting of evaluation of research group 1 year ago, more or less, discussing these aspects. And we had a monthly meta check of what people were thinking about disciplinary evaluation, disciplinary specific evaluation. And it's clear that people would like to, there are issues, and we all know that, with evaluation, the general evaluation metrics, in general, but people think that they would feel more comfortable if there was an understanding of, a better understanding of what is specific in their own discipline about what they do, what they produce, and if these things were included in the evaluation frameworks. So the idea was that the RDA has its very diverse community, and building on that community, it's a topic we could begin to address and see what happens, in a sense. So we made a call for volunteers, which was shared with the RDA groups and the ambassadors. And we have several colleagues showed up, including Chris. Thank you, Chris. The idea was to have a representation of the diversity of research field. For the moment, we have a handful of fields, and you are very welcome to join. So if you are interested, please show up either in the chat or in the meeting notes. You are really welcome to join if you think you are interested in participating in the discussion. For the moment, we are still discussing, have a very preliminary discussion, and we began to gather relevant documents and ideas. So Chris, you volunteered, thank you, to say a few words about pathways to advancing evaluation and recognition. And there are many links which can be useful, which are on the next slide, and I show it for you. The floor is yours.
Yeah, so I actually just wanted to also back up and say one of the reasons why I responded is because it's very important, I think, for the Shark group to have a connection to this group and vice versa. And so, for those of you who are not familiar with the Shark group, you can see one of our latest blog. I'll share the link there, but it's sort of a recap of all the work that we did recently. And Laurence is here. Laurence and Anne did a really good job of keeping the connections, and so I'm keeping it up as well. and so I think that this is just part of that too. But also the case Francois said that the case where I was recently at. So I recently moved back from Sweden, and in Sweden I was the head of open science at SciLifLab. I'm now an advisor there still, but yeah, we I think what was interesting, just to tell this in sort of story format, is that Sweden, when I landed, there was already sort of the discussions of developing a national open science plan, sort of guidelines, and that was sort of critical. One of the first critical things that was helpful in sort of trying to, sort of advance assessment, advance of open science. And so initially, had the chance to sort of contribute to that, but the guidelines were really helpful in the rest of the conversations that I had, and also at the time, Quora. I mean, Quora is not exactly, wasn't exactly new, but it was still sort of ramping up, and Quora was another sort of helpful. Oh,
Sorry.
yeah. Quora was another helpful initiative that was happening. And, it was something that we sort of jumped on right away as a way to, um, I think our core messaging for SciLife Lab was around team science, around recognizing the contributions of researchers. And so we had some of those discussions. I went up in front of committees to put forward this plan. And there was skepticism, around sort of the usual things that happened. We're used to H-index. We're used to sort of assessing in this way. Um, and I think what really resonated to them was that, hey, there was a way to recognize some of these contributions because SciLife Lab is in a way built on collaboration. And just also to back up and tell you about SciLife Lab, it's a life sciences platform for Sweden, so it enables collaboration and also sort of facilitates, some of these big projects around life sciences. And so collaboration, team science is really a big part of what SciLife Lab was doing. And so you can see our action plan there. Some have said that it's actually kind of nice. It's very succinct in what it's doing, very simple, and not trying to do too much. But it really sort of, focused on how do we recognize that? Let's try to make it more visible, right? And so one of the other things that we were trying to do is set up the monitoring, which I think, scientists really find that they're doing this work and it's not being seen, it's not being recognized. Why should they do it? And we saw that recently in a survey that went around by Digital Science, where they were saying those kind of things to us, right? And so the monitoring, what is doing that, Francois? You gotta stop stop fidgeting with the slides. But yeah, we set up the open air monitor as well, which you can see that launched right at the end when I was leaving. It took me 2 years to work on that and get it through sort of the procurement processes in Sweden. But it's nice now to have something we can point to that can visualize, some of the work that's being done, not just publications. The other part was just trying to do the guidance and training up people on open science, and that wasn't sort of another like piece of the puzzle. But the other thing was in the National Open Science Guidelines, software research software is not really mentioned. And so, we advocated for that in the guidelines, but then one thing we did was host a workshop on research soft by the research software funders. And we invited the Swedish Research Council and other funders, and I think it really sort of started planting a flag too, like that this was important to, and so it was a sort of another way to sort of elevate and the work they were doing. Um, and it shouldn't actually be last, but not least, is the policy aspect. And we already had a data policy at SciLife Lab, but one of the things I was doing was trying to update it, right, to something, and actually should say guidelines, draft open science guidelines. But I, for those of you who are interested, it's still in progress. But it was sort of an attempt to start trying to streamline the guidance, the recommendations for the community. So give them sort of clear instructions on how to do this, which I think sometimes the policies don't really have. Um, but a lot of this work is built off of other things. Like, so I included the Michael J. Fox Foundation Open Science Policy. There's also the Aligning Science Across Parkinson's policy, which I was building off of where I worked at previously and where I'd learned, some of this as well. Like let's start being more practical with researchers and asking them what to do, and let's try to start building the systems to visualize, the different aspects of research that are being produced. And another place that I was building on was the AGU data and software for authors work that I also worked on at AGU and learned a lot from as well. And the other thing I should say here too is I included it at the last minute here, but the ESO telescope bibliography. I don't know why the link's not here, but this is from Francois can probably relate to this. Is that I also build on that experience of working in astronomy, where the telescopes do a lot of this work of trying to extract out all the things that people are doing, and there are these evaluation systems to see, are you doing the things that we're asking you to do? Otherwise, you don't get access to the telescopes. So, like, I think that's been an effective, system that I was also sort of learn from and building from as well. Um, but yeah, and this just goes into current work with also doing this at NIH again, finding that researchers have don't really like know these particular things that they should be doing, how it impacts further on down in the system, and then they come back and say, I don't understand why my systems are not being recognized as much, the work that we're doing. And so we're working with them, a lot of these repositories at NIH to help with that. And the other thing I just mentioned too is RAID, which, one of the other things I've found with all these open science policies is that you end up asking people to share all their data, their software, all these things, and when they do that, then the connections between them are not done well, or not done at all. And it comes time to when a funder or an agency wants to look at it and say, well, how is collaboration happening? How are these things interconnected? And you end up with this hairball of all these things, right? All these outputs. And so, like, that's one of the other things we're trying to work on, is trying to help with that with RAID and connect all these different things. But yeah, I just wanted to share sort of these pathways, and as I call them, and I don't know if they help in any case hearing this case, but if you have any questions.
So I don't see questions, but I think it's useful resources, and it's also useful to see how the thematic infrastructure is building up its own open science policy, taking into account, I guess the documents show how they take into account their specificities in terms of discipline and activities. So we will, this is why we share all these links in case they can be useful, and we can go back at a later stage on different aspects, I guess. So I don't see questions here. Thank you, Chris. And this time I cannot change the slide. Yes, I do. So another way of checking how we can tackle the case of disciplinary aspects of research evaluation. The starting point was to see whether we could explore a set of examples. So we have not begun that with a group, but as I am an astronomer, I did the job for astronomy. And so I don't know if you see, I am not sure you don't see the right here. I will show you the list I get for astronomy. So for the moment, of course, an issue because I mixed up activities and products. And Carmel very well commented immediately that it would be better to separate. But for the moment, the idea was to think about what does an astronomer do and produce during his or her own work. And so there are the usual things which are already taken into account: bibliographic products, contributions to conferences. And then for us, of course, the facilities and infrastructures and instruments are really key for the discipline. And there is lots of work linked to the development, definition, development, and implementation of and operations of the instruments. So this is part of the activities, basically. Since we are in the RDA, there is also a list of things which are linked to data and computer activities and products. And we have lots of databases, data services, and so on in the discipline, which are public and used by the community every day. We work on standards and methods, and all this is always forgotten in evaluation. Teaching and training, this is quite generic. Societal aspects are also generic. Management is generic. Evaluation expertise is also generic. But you see, we could try to begin to produce this kind of lists for different disciplines. And it's clear that in other disciplines, it can be relatively similar, and in others, it can be very different. And then to see if we can build a set of examples. So this is one of the things we could do in the subgroup. And if you are interested, if you have comments on that. So, yes, thank you. Thank you, Laurence. I see a question to you, Chris, about RED. Was it easy to implement?
Yeah, so we have a demo instance of it set up where we're working with stakeholders in the US right now to understand their needs and understand the business model around it. And but yeah, we have a working instance and what we might end up doing is working more closely with ARDC on more of a production instance and so like that because like on what we're finding on the US side is we're more we're more concentrated on the engagement side and community piece right now, like because one of the other things that we need to develop around RAID is the material, the guidance and other things that people need. So that's where we've found that we'll probably might spend more time, but yeah.
So yes, I know this is a topic of interest for many people in the RDA and in the organizations, of course.
Yeah, and of course, like EOSC is the surf in via EOSC is going to sort of offer RAID. I think initially they've had they've had focus on institutions in the Netherlands to start, but like when I was at SciLife Lab, we were in the process of signing. We actually did, I think, the Swedish National Data Service signed an agreement with SURF. So yeah, that's ramping up now. I think that's the problem is in some ways it's the agreements aspect that's getting in that's taking a while with people because then sometimes you get lawyers involved and that's fun.
Yes, I think it's work in progress, and all these things are really developing fast. I mean, also in the policies, in the national policies. So if I go back to the disciplinary aspects of research evaluation, you are really, really, really welcome. If you are interested in joining the discussion in the subgroup of evaluation of research interest group. So you just put your name in the meeting notes, and you will be included in the discussion after this meeting. I mean, And if you know people who could be interested, please tell them to send me a message, and they will be very welcome, because we need to widen the number of topics we can cover in the group in any case. So also, if you have suggestions about what the group could do, feel free to share them. For the moment, we are really in an exploration phase about what can be done. So if I go to the last part of the activities, I need to share again. So it goes to so the last thing I wanted to say 2 words about is the fact that we are still working on updating our group. So the current version, you have a link in the meeting notes and in the slides. We have added new groups, including the Infra for anti-arrows group, but there are new groups burgeoning in the RDA very frequently. And so it's quite possible we have missed some. And what we have done, I think Laurence Mabille was proposing that when we discussed the output a few months ago, was to add a list of relevant RDA outputs. So here we have gone through the list of RDA outputs, and we have a preliminary list, and I will show it, but I have to. So here it is. Partager. Voilà. So we have here is open for comment and addition. So for the moment, the outputs are organized into metrics criteria, stakeholders, research outputs, and their relevant properties, disciplinary aspects eventually. So we have data usage metrics. We have, of course, the sharing rewards and comments outputs. There is one from the artificial intelligence and data visitation, which is the recommendation for the research guidance for ethics committee reviewing AI and DV. And then I think this group has lots of outputs, and it would be useful to examine them with a group to know which ones are relevant to evaluation, because I don't think they are all relevant. There is the policies about the recommendation. There is a long list of recommendations about policies in research organization for research software. And so this is a recommendation which is linked to evaluate, pushing people to have a policy telling people to share their software is really important for evaluation. There is a similar feeling about the data policies, journal data policies, and then the properties of research output. We have a fair data maturity model. We have something about physical samples and collections. These are outputs which are very often forgotten. So it's very important to show that they are in the landscape. Fair for research software criteria. And I added, because of my old CAP from repositories, the recommendations which are dealing with the certification and characteristics of research repository attributes. So But for the people who work in a repository, they are a research product and they are also a research infrastructure. For the people who work in repositories and in the RDA, this part of their work is in general not taken properly into account in their evaluation. So for the most we are here, you are very welcome if you know if you can suggest additional outputs which are relevant to evaluation from the RDA, and we will add them. So I see that you will meet people in the RED meeting. Yes, as Aline is saying, there is a huge work and discussion in France at present about PIDs at the national level, national policy of PIDs, and RED is part of the discussion, yes. So where will be the RED meeting?
Utrecht in the Netherlands. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, and there are people at the ministry who are really dealing with the national policy, PID policy, and the RED aspects are really included in it.
Yeah, I know there's, just like what you said, there's great interest from France. So I would imagine they would, like RAID's kind of interesting because it's the way it's forming is kind of more around partnerships around of major infrastructure, right? Like, so RDC is obviously leading, but then you have SURF, and then you have the Canadians with the Alliance, as well, and then you have San Diego Supercomputing Center and Lyrasis in the US, and so I imagine, from the French, side of things, that's where you would also come in. And I think it's kind of appealing in the sense that it's not like starting from like a company, or that it's actually infrastructures coming together, to put this together. So I think that's probably in the spirit of RDA, right? So.
And Carmel just added a link to a document about ARDC and RED. So I think it's a global discussion now. So are there any comments, questions, suggestions for the activities we have described until now? I don't think I see comments coming, so I will show the last slides and we will see if there are additional comments. So we have the next steps. So yes, you have seen that we are eager to develop Liaisons for our own sake, but also for the sake of other RDA groups. So if you see additional liaisons which could be useful to develop, either inside with RDA groups or with external initiatives, can you please indicate them, share them in the chat or in the meeting notes? As you have seen, we build up the liaison by discussing with people, and then we can organize meetings so that we discuss and understand what people are doing. So we are really willing to continue that. And so feel free to tell us if you have suggestions, either now or later. We are really happy if you send us messages later with suggestions. So if I go to the work program, we would like to go on until the next plenary. The idea is to continue and develop the ongoing liaison. So you heard about some of them. One thing to do is to check the AIDV outputs for relevance with evaluation, and this will require discussion with them. We have Shark is meeting tonight for me, is meeting later for Chris. And we think it would be, I think the two sides think it would be good to develop a bit further the liaison between the two groups. So we will discuss, but one possibility is to have to exchange one co-chair, which could be in one group, someone from one group as a co-chair of the other one, so we can understand what the others are doing and know about it, and they can also understand what the other group is doing. So it's something which is being discussed with the Shark group. We had a vote in this plenary about a Coara Boost project about ethics self-evaluation in research assessment. So the idea was to discuss during the BOF was to organize an event to discuss the project result. The project is supposed to produce its result in August. So the idea was to have a meeting to discuss with them so that they can present what they are doing, and to have this eventually as an RDA event. So this Alex Delipalta is the contact person on their side for that. So we continue to have a look at Coara, and of course they will be the outputs of a Force 11 group about data usage typologies, and everybody will be invited to comment the output, and then there will be the next output about metadata, about the typology metadata, and again there will be a call for comment, I think. So we will continue to work on the disciplinary aspects. And again, I probably said that 10 times, but if it's the 11th time, if you are interested, please join. And we will continue the update of the RDA value for the evaluation of research. And I think that this will require to ask the group chairs to send a message to the group chairs to ask them for their relevant outs. And additional ideas are of course welcome. I see that there are many things in the chat I did not see, so. Okay. I think that
Francois,
the discussion.
there's a question
Yes.
in the chat. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I see Yasuhiro. I think that, for the moment, we have if Yasuhiro, is your question about the disciplinary aspects of evaluation?
Yeah, either one, but yeah, some aspects can be a general such
Absolutely.
evaluation framework, and some are in a more disciplinary, and yeah.
Absolutely. It's clear that when we discuss the disciplinary aspects, we also have the generic ones which are in the framework. So I think that for the moment, one good path to go towards international aspects about evaluation is to talk in particular to Coara. And for the moment, Coara has only 2 disciplinary working groups, and they do not cover the wide range of disciplines. And the idea was to continue to talk with them and to see if we can propose something at a later stage eventually. But for the moment, we still have to understand how to work. And this is what is upon the table for the moment. Chris?
Well,
Okay.
Coara has a national chapters. We had one in Sweden, and that if you're fortunate to have a national chapter, then I guess that's the mechanism to work with the local, parties
Yes.
as well, and trying to, move these things forward. But generally, when you look at like national guidelines and things like that. Like you said, I think Francois is like you'll point to in the guidance it'll say, or a policy it will say, refer to Quora, like it won't be like, and so for us, I think it's harder, like if you do the work in an RDA group, it's a little bit buried. It can't be like in a similar fashion, like they do in RDA. Although I've seen that, right? Like to say for data, related things sometimes is, like RDA to be mentioned, but like that's an important point to say, like maybe it needs to kind of stand out, like because that's what we're talking about in Shark later about an observatory, um, in some ways. So that could be, you know, stand out a bit more because like I guess it stems from, like the work with these other groups, like you're saying with Quora and in RDA and trying to sort of, you know, elevate it to some extent. But
Yashuhiro, if I can say something about what Chris just said. I
Yes,
have member of the French Quora chapter, and the discussion about disciplinary aspects is also ongoing in the French chapter. We discussed that in one of the meetings in the last General Assembly where we met last year, and we will go back to that in any case. So I think that the issue with Quora is that it's not as well known and represented, in particular in North America, as it is in Europe or South America, because there are not as many members as they are. And to build a chapter, you need to have people. So I don't know, Yashuhiro, if these things are moving in Japan, because they are moving in Japan about evaluation of research.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that's in fact in Japan, and as far as I know, there's no koala or DORA bodies who has a contact with the government or ministry. The just I wanted to ask the Chris that and so or the Francois in your country there. So your national chapter had contact with the ministries in charge of science, right?
Yes, it is. It is even financed by the ministry to have someone to help the chapter. So there is the chapter is really in touch with the ministry.
Great.
yeah,
Yes.
in Sweden, but as Francois says, in US, there's no Quora chapter. There's a separate initiative called Helios that's worked with the universities, but I think like US is kind of an interesting beast because there's other ways, there's agencies in the US and it's a little bit different, but yeah, like we did maybe something else to mention with Shark is that we mentioned this observatory kind of idea, or like the sort of trying to elevate this work, and it turns out ISC is trying to do the same thing. Like the International Science Council, is trying to like, work on the same things. And so it's like trying to bring these things together, like and I think, like we were going to report back to the ISC and say like, this is what happened at RDA and see, like see if there's like some way to work together and because the IC could be really great, have great potential in that respect, like where it's like not just in a region, right? So
Mm. Thank you very much. Yeah, in fact, I took the 10 years to convince the Japanese government to have the open science is a good thing. And now the people are looking at that now. And so the change of the research evaluation is the next step. And I haven't yet covered it, but yes, it's challenge. And it's, yeah, good. Uh, yeah, ongoing practices of yours is very helpful for me. Thank you very much. Yes.
Thanks to you, Yashiro. Yes, it takes time and effort, but it's worth. So I think I have a feeling we are going towards the end of this meeting. Are there any additional comments, suggestions? Feel free to add things in the meeting notes if you wish, of course. You can add outputs if you know some. And again, you can contact us anytime if you want to participate in activities or if you have suggestions. So maybe, yes, Lauren?
Sorry, I'm calling from a bicycle, so I won't turn on my camera. So we are struggling with something similar where we have to come up with a PID strategy and think about kind of the data we need in place to enable research and evaluation. So I had just written in the meeting minutes that I'd be interested in working with folks on those specific questions because maybe other groups are facing the same challenges.
Thank you. Yes. And so, dear colleagues, maybe for some of you, it's time to go to a restful night, I hope, at last. And for some of us to finish the day as best as possible. So, dear colleagues, thank you very much for this meeting, for your participation in the meeting. And I hope we stay in touch for the next steps. So, bye-bye.